I see it on multiple levels. I think for me, I've become more aware of it being an issue, so that I'm making an effort to turn my cell phone off on the weekends, and I don't check my email, and I'm trying to be more proactive about kind of living outside of the net. I have friends that when I'm with them, they're always updating their Instagrams and their Twitters and their Facebooks, and they're kind of alone together in the sense that we're all in the same space, but everyone's on their phones interacting with people online, even if we're out to dinner one-to-one. But I also see it kind of as a reflection of a larger systematic thing going on with society, and the fact that we're starting to rely so heavily on these apps and devices and things to communicate with each other that we just stop having any sort of dialogue or interaction face to face, and it's affecting, if we don't have Facebook, for example, we can't order food or comment on certain blogs, and we can't get on Tinder and get dates. And so there's starting to be these sort of larger kind of implications of taking yourself online or being online in terms of your activity within society, even if that activity is a screen-based interaction versus a physical interaction. So for me, I'm very aware of that, and I do try to make an effort to step away from it as much as possible. And only recently did I start getting a smartphone, which is really crazy to a lot of people. It was only last year I got a smartphone, or even having a cell phone at all. So that's really changed my relationship with the net again, because I feel much more dependent on it, and I'm checking it all the time and doing all these things that I see other people doing that had really bothered me prior to having my own. You have your own personal tracking device, so everything you're doing is there, all of your secrets, all of your information, where you are, it's all on this little device. And so instead of it being like an external thing where we have security cameras and everything around us, now like we carry the camera, we carry the microphone, and we carry all the location data, or we wear it, right? So we're kind of becoming this interesting form of like a bionic person, where it's not necessarily put into our bodies, but we're like voluntarily putting it into our bodies or onto our bodies, and kind of becoming that naturally. I tend to kind of reverse engineer an idea. So the way I typically produce the work is I come up with the end piece before I know how to necessarily implement it. So I might say like, okay, I really want to make these liberator vases, but then I need to know about parametric programming, and I need to get better at Python, and I start thinking about all these things I need to do to get to where I want to go. And that's always how I've learned everything. So I just look at what it is that I want to do, and then I find people who can do it and teach it to me, or are much smarter than me in that regard, and I'll say, how can I do this? And they'll say, okay, check out this book, look at this blog, like here's this library I wrote. And so you start seeing all these trajectories and ways of doing it, and then that somehow kind of eventually comes together, or doesn't, when I'm working on the idea. So it's like I'm not medium dependent, obviously. I'm much more interested in what it is that I want to kind of translate or explain in the piece, and how do I encapsulate that, and then how do I go about producing that or outputting it. I have a really interesting perspective, because I basically worked in IT, I made a lot of money from IT, and then I decided that I was more interested in pursuing something artistically. The catch with that is that typically and traditionally, to pursue art, you basically have to allocate a few years without really any source of income. So you have to find ways to, you have to be creative in how you maintain your practice. So a lot of people do that by, waiting tables or doing that sort of thing. But I was lucky in the fact that I had done this IT work, and I had done the Silicon Valley thing. So I'd been paid very well. I saved my money really well, and I was able to kind of start my art practice based off of that savings. And so I was very practical in the sense that I knew how many years I could live very modestly off of that money, and if I did speaking gigs and workshops and these sort of things, I can kind of maintain that balance. The trick with art and a lot of kind of careers where you're basically self-employed is that you have to find a way to look at your cash flows and all of these really non-sexy things that people don't want to talk about. But it's really key to being able to maintain your practice, and practice and being an artist is knowing that one month you might make, $30,000 or $40,000, and then you might not make money again until the end of the year or the next year. And so you really have to be aware of kind of where things are going or how you're budgeting. And so that's kind of my primary advice whenever I talk to graduate students or people that are going out, is like, be very aware of your cash flows, and if you're entering, be aware of kind of not knowing where the next paycheck's going to come or where the next payment will come from for a while, until you've started to develop a pattern and realize, the highs and lows of the seasons of fairs and all these sort of things that you start thinking about once you get further into it.